majority of women are taking fitness and exercise advice from influencers specifically, right? People who may be fit, but they're not from people who have studied the human body and have studied movement like you have.
Strength training is the cornerstone of your routine, and we can talk about what needs to be in that in order to be effective. So I like to think of building muscle as a way to improve your insulin sensitivity, and then that will have global effects on your body.
Do you see people who are still overtraining and overdoing it and not realizing it?
For me, that's what it took. It took understanding the science and the logic in order to switch my mindset. Once we burn too much from exercise and movement, they downregulate other things that require energy in our bodies. Some of those things, you hit a point where it becomes negative. Reproductive health.
It's going to protect you because it's going to say whatever is happening here is not a state where we feel comfortable using energy to get pregnant.
Yes.
Welcome back to the As a Woman podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Natalie Crawford, and today's guest is Dr. Shannon Ritchey, a physical therapist and founder of EVLO Fitness, a science-backed strength program built specifically for women. We're talking all about movement for hormone optimization and fertility, what type of exercise actually supports your hormones, what you should avoid at different times in your life, and how to move smarter and not necessarily harder. We want to talk about what happens through your cycle, when you're stressed, and at the different phases of your life. Whether you're dealing with fatigue, whether you're feeling stressed, or you're looking to just support your fertility or longevity, this episode is going to change the way that you think about your health and exercise. So let's dive in. Shannon, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so fun because you were just on my podcast like a couple months ago. So now I'm here on the other side. So I'm
excited. Thrilled to have you, and I just started having guests back and you were one of the first ones. I was like, I want to have Shannon on the show.
I'm so honored.
Well, thank you. It just speaks to the importance of what you're doing. And I want to say before we dive into all our questions that I tell everybody about you and about EVLO because I think it's just such an idea of using your healthcare professionalism and expertise in a way that's really accessible to help people.
Oh, well, thank you. I think, it drives me a little insane, the fitness industry, because I think it's so consumerism based.
Yes.
Like it's so based in marketing and trends and fads. And there's not a lot of science, especially for women for some reason. Like women just get marketed totally incorrectly, and it causes them to waste a lot of their time and money and resources and causes joint pain and then doesn't work. So I think it's really frustrating. So,
you have to think about the fact that the majority of women are taking fitness and exercise advice from influencers specifically, right? People who may be fit, but they're not from people who have studied the human body and have studied movement like you have.
So many fitness influencers don't even have any credentials. Like they maybe took like an online course, but they have never worked with real humans. They have never they don't know what a glute is, right? Like they don't even know the basic anatomy. And that's no shame, but it's just like, okay, maybe we should be looking. I see exercise and fitness as part of your health. Your musculoskeletal system is a huge organ.
It's your biggest.
It's your biggest organ.
Yes.
And so we need to take care of it just like we would other organs. And so why would you not work with somebody who's a trusted professional about that? So,
well, I love
endless
it.
Frustration for me.
But you're doing something unique, which in some way is kind of sad also, right?
Yeah.
That you're trying to really reform this by bringing this really attainable information about how you move your body and exercise and how it impacts your health from somebody who is a professional. So I love it. And props to you because, challenge the norm is something I'm always a big fan of.
That's right. Let's do it.
Let's just talk about exercise and how it comes to key hormones, right? In your day-to-day functioning. Because we both know that, exercise is a big part of movement, but a lot of people, especially a lot of women, when they think about exercise, they think about running on the treadmill.
Yeah.
Right. But exercise and movement is a lot more than that. Yes. Right. So what do you want to whether it's breaking down categories of exercise or thinking about how moving your body and muscle impacts your hormones? How do you break this down to people?
I always say have strength training be kind of the cornerstone of your routine and then add in everything else supplementary. Everyone wants to do all the things, cold plunging, walking with a weighted vest, Pilates, all of the things.
Yes.
And it's like, I really think that if most people just nailed their strength training routine, it would cover the majority of their bases. And then from there, we do want to add cardio. Cardio is important. I'm not a cardio hater, but I think that it's over glorified. And I think that most women who try to embark on strength training are actually just doing cardio. They're not actually properly strength training. But if strength training is the cornerstone of your routine, and we can talk about what needs to be in that in order to be effective, you are building muscle and you're building strength. And muscle, as we talked about on my podcast, as you so eloquently talked about, is an incredible organ to improve your insulin sensitivity. And I see insulin as a hormone that can benefit every aspect of your body since it touches every single cell of your body. So I like to think of building muscle as a way to improve your insulin sensitivity, and then that will have global effects on your body.
I love that, because when we really do think about it, your skeletal muscle is responsible for 80% of the glucose or the sugar utilization of your cells. 80%, right?
Yes.
So when we think about the building blocks of your cells and how we use energy and nutrients, the more muscle you build, not only is it using more glucose, but it's helping your body be more sensitive because it's detecting that glucose goes lower and preventing things like insulin resistance, which causes inflammation, hormone dysfunction, abnormal ovulation. And so if we look at strength training as a backbone, as a goal of building more skeletal muscle, then that can set you up and lay a good foundation. I know that exercise, we're going to talk a lot about it when it comes to for stress relief and for cardiac purposes. But when it comes to thinking about exercise, I agree with you. I like thinking about it as building that muscle as the foundation so that you're setting up for success.
Yes.
Okay, but you said that a lot of people think that they are doing strength training, but they're doing glorified cardio. So break that down.
Yes. So I think commonly what I'll see is lifting weights in a boot camp class, or doing even like some Pilates method. I say some Pilates methods. Anytime I talk about this, I get so much backlash.
People love Pilates right now.
I know people, and it's very trendy. It's very popular, but there are so many different methods nowadays.
There are.
So it's really hard to cast this wide umbrella on Pilates in general, because there's so many different ways to do it. But a lot of times it's basically really high rep. A lot of times classical Pilates actually isn't, but modern Pilates is often really high rep. And so you're focused more on metabolic stress and the burn of the muscle. And that is not shown to build muscle tissue because the stimulus is not high enough in order to drive muscle adaptation and hypertrophy and change. So we need to lower the reps a little bit. They don't have to be super low. Studies show that you can do reps anywhere from 6 to 30. And as long as your sets are taken to failure or a few reps shy of failure, that can build muscle. But if you're going
6 to 30 is a pretty big range,
range. And you will hear, it's a big range. And you will hear a lot of experts saying like, you have to lift heavy for low reps. Yes. That is not true. That's not based on the current evidence, even in men and women, even in women in perimenopause and all of those things. So you have a wide range. You have a lot of options, which I really like, because I think when women are told like, it has to be this one specific way.
We follow the rules.
Right. We follow the rules, or people are like, I don't want to do that. And I'm not going to stay consistent with that. And therefore they don't stay consistent and they don't see results. So they just do what they like. They end up doing the Pilates and they don't really see much change. So they don't really see much ROI, return on investment, for the time that they're spending in their workout. So if you are taking all of your sets close to failure, so like that's 1 to 2 reps, maybe 3 reps shy of failure or to failure, that will build muscle. And I think a lot of people don't know what failure is.
Right.
There's a people confuse fatigue and failure a lot.
Okay, what's the difference?
And that's a lot of times the Pilates people, they're like, oh, I'm getting to failure. And it's like, yes, it's hard. Your muscles are shaking, you're burning. But fatigue and failure are very different. So failure means you have stimulated a high percentage of the overall muscle tissue to the point where you could not continue the movement.
Could not do it.
The muscle needs a good amount of recovery, like at least a minute, in order to complete in order to do more reps after that. So a really good way to know if I'm fatigued or if I'm at failure is if you think you're at failure, stop the exercise, shake it out, 5 seconds, try again. If you could continue doing more reps, you were fatigued, you were not at failure. And understanding that difference will make your workouts so much more potent and more effective. So when you're at a Pilates class and you're like, I'm shaking, it's burning, if you can drop out of that for a second and get right back into it, that's not a very high stimulus. The load wasn't enough. So I think that understanding that differentiation allows you to spend your time a lot more wisely in your workouts.
Do you recommend weights be a part of strength training for most people?
I do, but I always say resistance is resistance. So physics doesn't care if you're holding a dumbbell, if you're holding a barbell, if you're doing a machine. Even some exercises with body weight can build muscle. Like, for example, could you do more? A lot of women couldn't do more than 30 push-ups before they get to failure, right?
Right.
So like,
or fewer,
much fewer, a lot of women. So that could be an effective exercise for muscle growth for the upper body. Same with pull-ups. However, then there's some body weight exercises like planks. A lot of women can hold planks for a really long time. So that's more endurance. The stimulus isn't high enough to really build significant tissue in the abdomen. So I would suggest something like a dynamic ball crunch instead, where you're kind of like it's basically a supported crunch with something behind your back. And you can even add load to that, like add a weight at your chest so that you are getting close to that failure point in under 30 reps. Some reformer exercises may build muscle if you are truly getting close to that failure point, not just fatigue in 30 reps or less. So I tend to use dumbbells. I think they're just really accessible.
Right.
But resistance is resistance and physics does not care.
I love that. But do you find that women are resistant to use weights?
I do. I think that they think it needs to be one certain way.
Yeah.
And I think when you understand the science of it, like people think it needs to be like heavy squats with a barbell or heavy overhead press. They have this image of what it is. And it's like men grunting in the gym and they're like, I don't want to do that. Or like, I don't like doing that. I'm not going to stay consistent with that. So I think when you understand the science, you understand, okay, I have a lot of autonomy over the rep range I can use. If I like a little higher rep, if I like doing 20 reps, I can do that with slightly lighter weights and still build the same amount of muscle if I'm doing 6 reps close to failure. Cool. Or exercise selection is another one where you have a lot of options and a lot of autonomy. I don't squat or deadlift. And I get a lot of blowback on that because it is so ingrained in our brains that it is necessary.
Right.
But it's not. There are so many different options that you can choose for your legs that can build the same amount of muscle, the same amount of functionality, the same amount of strength. And when you start to choose the exercises and the rep ranges that you enjoy and you can stay consistent with, that is when you start to see the results.
I love this freedom.
Yeah.
Right.
It's freedom.
So it's not that this is the workout that I'm given, so I have to do it. And I hate squats, yet here I am I hate lunges. And I know right away.
Don't do it.
If I have lunges in my routine, like that, we're going to like hit a wall or the barrier to success to want to do that workout because I know that there's lunges in it. Like I hate them.
Well, and there's science behind that too. So if you think about it, again, when we're talking about the most important stimulus is getting close to failure.
Yeah.
And if you are stopping an exercise because you just want it to be over, you're like, how many times have you done an exercise that you hate? And you're like, I know deep down I could do more reps, but I hate this. I'm done.
Yes,
I'm
absolutely.
just done. And so you're stopping the exercise for the wrong reasons. And that's not going to be a very effective exercise. Whereas if you choose one that you're like, oh, I love this one. Like I love hip thrusts. Like I'm going to really get all the way to failure or 2 reps shy of failure in hip thrusts because I could keep doing those forever. So I think that understanding those little tweaks makes you it makes your workouts way more fun too.
It does.
Which is important for your consistency.
I love that. And I think that I'm always surprised because I talk to patients about movement and exercise, how if I ask if somebody's doing strength training, how often they say no, or I didn't think I could, or I didn't think I should, which surprises me even still that I'm hearing the same answer, that when I ask about exercise, I am consistently given the cardio exercise that people are doing. They're very quick to tell me if they walk or they ride a Peloton bike or they're on the treadmill. But when I say, what about weights or strength training or resistance training? It's pretty much no.
Yeah. Well, I think the awareness around it is growing, luckily, but it's just still not there. Like ACOG, for example, during pregnancy, they give very detailed recommendations for cardio, right? It says like, we recommend 150 minutes, like you want this intensity, you want to avoid this intensity in general. These are some activities that are great. It's like, and so women feel like, okay, I could do that. I can go on a brisk walk. Like I know how to do that. And then they say strength training is good. That's it.
Yeah.
And then it's like, what kind of strength training?
Like, what are you supposed to do with that information?
How heavy can I lift? What exercises can I do? What methods are out there for me? Like, what can I? And so I just think there's a lack of guidance and because, traditionally women haven't been strength training, or they've been marketed to like the lighter weight type of stuff. So I think that the awareness is not there yet, and the science isn't there yet. Or the science is there. It is there. But it's just like we need to apply it.
Yeah, we need a better publicist for exercise and strength training for people, right?
Yes.
Because the treadmill publicist has done like a really great job.
And Pilates publicist is also
they're on
amazing.
top of it right now.
They are.
I see patients, often, who will have hypothalamic amenorrhea, right? So this idea that too much of a good thing or the wrong thing is not just, not helping you, it actually can be harmful, right? So we know that when it comes to exercise, like building skeletal muscle, fighting insulin resistance, all of that's great. But if your body is spending so much time overtraining, if you are spending more calories than you are taking in, that this can have really detrimental impact on your body. Yes. And I still see a lot of people who don't recognize that it's a problem, that they have irregular cycles or absent periods, or they don't connect it to the level of overtraining that they're doing.
Yes.
Do you see people who are still overtraining and overdoing it and not realizing it?
It's a constant struggle. And I think that it's not your fault, because I think that's what we're conditioned to believe, quote unquote, works. And I can say this from personal experience. I have a personal history of overdoing it, over exercising, working out every single day, sometimes twice a day to like be lean and thin. And ironically, I work out I'm pregnant now, but pre-pregnancy was in the best shape of my life and worked out for less than half the amount of time and intensity than I did before. I just working out a lot smarter and recovering properly. So I think when I'm speaking to someone like this, I'm sensitive to say like, it's okay. It's understandable why you think you need to do that. I've been there. But when you understand the science and you start to unravel some of the physiology behind it, your mindset will shift. And for me, that's what it took. It took understanding the science and the logic in order to switch my mindset. Because it's really easy to say, like, give yourself grace, give yourself recovery. And those people are like, yeah, but that doesn't work.
Right.
But I think one of the most impactful things for me was understanding the constrained total energy expenditure model. Have you heard about this?
Yes.
It's like, yes.
Explain it for us.
Love learning and talking about this. I feel like not enough people are talking about this. So it's basically a model of how we burn calories. We once thought that the more exercise you did, the more calories you burned overall, and the quicker your fat loss, or the quicker you make yourself smaller. There's been some evolutionary research in the last, I think, like 10 years. Herman Ponzer, who studied the Hadza. It's a group of hunter-gatherer society. It's a hunter-gatherer society. And he wanted to see how many calories they were expending each day. They're working in the fields. They're lifting all day long. They are super, super active population. And what he found was that they burn about the same amount as an average American. And he was like, what is happening? That makes no sense. They are way more active than an average American. And so they dug into this deeper and they developed something called the constrained energy expenditure model, which basically says that the more activity you add, you're not necessarily linearly adding more of a deficit. You're not necessarily burning more calories overall. Your body tends to compensate at a certain level of activity. So let's say you work out and you're overall active. At a certain point, your body starts to borrow from other energy expending processes to keep you within a narrow window of calorie expenditure. And scientists think that this is so that you have a reserve of calories in case there's an emergency and you need to run or flight. You have some energy left. So our bodies kind of do this dance of like, once we burn too much from exercise and movement, they downregulate other things that require energy in our bodies. Some of those things are good. So like stress, inflammation, things like that. Some of those things, you hit a point where it becomes negative. Reproductive health, you start to develop brain fog. So it's taking energy from brain processing, things like that. So when you start to understand, wait, you're saying that I'm not actually burning more calories overall.
By doing more
at a certain point. I'm just
stealing
from other really important processes in my body. Then you're like, oh, okay, so why am I doing that? So I think that was a really pivotal moment for me to learn that, because it was a click. And it also like, I think it comes from a lot of like, you need to erase a meal or like work off what you ate. And when we learn like that just doesn't really work, we start to take better responsibility for our diet. We start to have a better relationship with food, thinking that like, oh, I can eat this because I'm going to go erase it tomorrow in a workout. I'm going to go kill myself tomorrow in my workout. So I think it's like such a beneficial thing to learn.
I love a few things that you said, one of which this idea of how your body's going to steal or get the energy from somewhere. And if that's going to be, well, your body is not convinced it can carry a pregnancy, then it's not going to send out the reproductive hormones, right? The FSH and LH from the brain. You're not going to ovulate. It's going to protect you because it's going to say, whatever's happening here, it may not realize it's because you're doing 90 minutes on the treadmill every day.
Right.
It says whatever is happening here is not a state where we feel comfortable using energy to get pregnant.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so stepping back and looking at exercise not as this punishment, not to erase food, right? But as a tool, right? So if we're using it in the right way to build more muscle, to relieve stress, to add benefit to our life, then it can have these positive changes. But too much of it or the wrong type can actually be detrimental.
Right. And I think people hear this and they're like, well, why am I exercising at all? And it's like, well, it does have incredible benefits and you do burn a certain amount of it does help with weight regulation, but just not as much as we've been led to believe. And I think understanding that allows you to feel like, okay, I'm done. Like you can have that like, finally I've done enough mentality.
Right.
Like, whereas like otherwise it just feels like there's never enough exercise. There's never enough movement. I can't take a recovery day. I can't take time off when I go on vacation. And it's also a mental spiral, which probably contributes to stress, which probably doesn't help the whole situation.
Well, and metabolism is much more than weight. We get conditioned that it is, if I'm skinny, I have a good metabolism. If I'm overweight, I have a bad one. But there's so much more that goes on to that process versus just the number that's on the scale.
Yes.
Right. And we really have to like disconnect these ideas in some way because the number on the scale, one, muscle can weigh, right? Weighs more than fat.
And muscle can improve your metabolism.
And it improves your metabolism, which we really think about metabolism as cellular function. How efficient your cells are at getting rid of toxins, at processing glucose, at helping your body function, right? And the different cells of your body do different things, right? Thinking with your brain or sending out reproductive hormones.
Yes.
That should be our metabolic goal versus a skinny number on the scale.
Totally. Because then everything gets easier, right? Like I feel like your hunger hormones are more balanced. You don't feel you're not stress eating as much. So it's almost like it's easier if you do have aesthetic goals, which I think aesthetic goals sometimes get demonized. But if you have appropriate aesthetic goals for your body, like sometimes it's easier to reach those when you are focused on the cellular health as number one.
Earlier you said, train smarter, not harder. Yes. Right. So how do you break this down and what advice do you give maybe the average person who you're talking to?
Yes. Well, I think, we already broke down 2 important principles that will help guide this conversation. So number 1, having muscle building be kind of the cornerstone of your routine. That helps with your cellular health, with your hormonal health. And then number 2, that calories burned are constrained, not additive. So we don't need to add a ton of extra cardio in order to get the cardiovascular benefits. 150 minutes of light to moderate intensity cardio is really all you need. If you can, depending on the population, I know for fertility purposes, sometimes you don't want to add things like high intensity training. And you could speak more to that. But if you are someone that can add high intensity training, sprint training, 1 to 2 times per week, short sessions, infrequent sessions, because they're high stress on your body. So you don't want to do a lot of it, but short interval training if you want. I'm not currently doing it during my pregnancy. And then strength training. So I really think those kind of 3 buckets, and add or subtract the HIIT, can cover your bases. And then when we're thinking about what should be in your strength training routine, we think about you want to hit each muscle group about 2 times per week. 1 to 2 times per week is a really good goal on non-consecutive days. So you never want to work the same muscle group on 2 consecutive days, leave 48 hours in between for recovery. And then the volume recommendations are at least 4 sets per week per muscle group for muscle growth. So if you're doing a minimum strength training routine, we want 2 sets in one workout of a muscle group and 2 sets in a second workout for that same muscle group. So doing that for your whole body, taking each set close to failure in under 30 reps. So if you have those things in your routine, you might find like, oh, my strength workouts like don't take a long time and I'm not super sore from them. You should not be super sore, by the way. We can talk about soreness if you want.
Yeah.
Light to no muscle soreness is ideal. People chase soreness, but soreness is not a good indicator of muscle growth. And you might not even break a sweat or burn very many calories. So it might not feel hard. It's hard in the sense that like getting close to failure in a set is hard. But it's a different kind of hard. It's not a like I'm crawling out of the gym hard. It's like, wow, I really worked my muscles hard. But often I often don't break a sweat in my strength training workouts. And me 10 years ago would have been like, that means I'm not doing enough. That means it's not effective. And yet I totally changed my body recomposition with that approach.
Yeah, you're changing your mindset too, because exercise is then easier in a way to do, because it's not that you have to do it for a set amount of time. You have flexibility with what you do and how many reps you do.
Yes.
Well, if you're not breaking a sweat like crazy, it's easier to put it in the middle of your day.
You don't have to wash your hair.
Exactly. You don't have this whole, I have to go get ready after. So I have to do it at this certain time or that certain time.
Yes.
You said earlier, about soreness. So you don't have to chase soreness. I hear people all the time talking about like, I'm so sore, so I got such a good workout.
Yes.
Why are we conditioned to think this?
I think it feels like you did something, right? Yeah. Like it's intuitive. Like it's like, oh, my glutes are super sore. And I even sometimes will think that. Like I get it. Like it makes intuitive sense. It means it means you use the tissue for sure, right? Of course. Like soreness doesn't just come out of nowhere. But the reason that soreness is not study after study have shown that they choose two groups. One group gets super sore, one group doesn't. They can see the exact same benefits. They can see the exact same amount of muscle growth. In fact, sometimes the soreness group sees less because they are not able to show up to their next workout with enough intensity. So the stimulus gets dampened because they're sore.
So you're doing one really hard workout, but then the other one's not as effective.
Right.
So you're not really building the muscle group.
Right. Or I'm sure all of us can relate to this. Like you go to a new workout or you really hit it hard and then you can't work out for like another week because you're so sore.
Right.
And it's like, that's not very productive because as we know from the literature, we want to hit those muscle groups frequently. Like frequency does matter. So if you can't work out for a week, that's not that's not going to take you very far. So I like to recommend light to no muscle soreness. When you start any new program, and this goes for even my strength training program, soreness is to be expected. It's a new stimulus that your body isn't used to. So that's the first reason we get sore. And the second reason we get sore is when our movements have a heavy eccentric component, so a lowering phase. Eccentrics are like the negative. So in a bicep curl, when you're lifting the weights up towards your shoulders, that's the concentric. The eccentric is the lowering down. So if your workouts are heavy on the eccentric component, like lots of slow lowering, that tends to cause more muscle soreness. Interestingly, there's a lot of data coming out right now about eccentrics, but eccentrics are not shown to be superior to concentrics. So a lot of people think like, oh, well, I'm doing a lot of eccentrics,
so I'm getting
sore, so that's going to be better. And it's not necessarily better. So I could argue that it maybe is worse. It's making you more sore. It's making your next workout less effective. Again, we might need some data there, but it makes intuitive sense to me. So I don't recommend chasing soreness. I recommend light to no muscle soreness after your body acclimates to a program.
I like that. Let's talk a little bit about, menstrual cycle and different like life phases. Okay.
Yes.
So cycle syncing, right? I think there's like a love-hate relationship, meaning there's something about learning and giving yourself the freedom to listen to your body and do different activity based on how you feel or what is working for you. But then there's also almost like a restrictive idea in some way, like I can't do this because I'm in this phase, or it's harder to build maybe a consistently good habit if you're constantly changing what you're doing.
Totally.
What are your thoughts here?
There's also a lot of literature coming out about cycle syncing right now, which is good. And basically the literature says there's really no additional benefit of cycle syncing. What I really like I'll start by saying what I like about it. What I really like about cycle syncing is it gives you permission to pay attention to your body and to dial back when you maybe don't feel like you have it in you to do it all. And I really, really love that. I think that we all need to be doing that like on a daily basis, and just learning how to listen to your body is a skill. So I think that this gives people the tools and framework to do that. And I love that. However, how it's commonly recommended on social media is to do something different every week of your cycle. So like,
which is not even how your cycle goes, by the way.
Right. Okay. Right. Oh my gosh. Like I'm sure you could speak to this like in detail, but it's like, I see when you're on your period, that's when you want to do yoga and stretch. And then the next week you add HIIT and you do your heavy strength training. And then, it's just like, you're not doing the same thing each week. You're doing different types of workouts and modalities of workouts for your entire cycle. And again, as we know, the consistency of working a muscle group and the progressive overload of it is important. And that requires that you're doing that each week. And so if you are taking a break from strength training 2 weeks out of your cycle, that's not going to really get you anywhere. And you might not even be enough to maintain what you have. So I recommend, instead of trying to do different workouts for each week of your cycle, just auto-regulate, check in instead. And I'm sure you could speak to this from a scientific perspective even more, but some people feel horrible on the first 2 days of their period. Mm-hmm. I feel amazing on the first 2 days of my period.
Period unicorn.
Yeah. I mean, I will take it. But like those first 2 days, I'm like, that I feel so strong. I feel so alive. And so that's when I feel like I can really get a great workout. However, on the days like leading up to my period, I feel horrible, so tired. So those are the days that I auto-regulate a little bit and I might do a shorter workout. Like I still show up and do the sets and get close to failure and stuff like that, but I might do 2 sets where I maybe would have done 4 if I was feeling good. Yeah. And just kind of auto-regulating. That way you're listening to your body and you stay in the game, which is the hardest thing for people to do, is just stay in the game.
I love your approach, and I have a very similar one. So to me, when we think about, movement and exercise, right? It's one of the foundations of your day. We've got, stress, sleep, and movement, that you are setting yourself up for success. And whether you're trying to get pregnant or not, strength training across the cycle should exist, right?
Yes.
You should be doing strength training, I say 2 to 3 times a week, no matter which phase of the cycle in. When we start talking about cycle syncing, I like to refer to that as, well, that's what you do in the other days and where you learn to listen to your body, right?
Love that.
If you're having lots of energy in your follicular phase, you want to run more, do your HIIT there, that's a great time for it.
I love that.
Right? But now we're in our luteal phase. This is where, probably because of the progesterone, you don't have as much energy.
Right.
And your body is going to get fatigued easier. We know your muscles can't go as far. So don't be surprised if you can't do as many reps on your strength days. And this might be where you naturally are gravitating to less intense cardio, right? And because your body's trying to support enough caloric reserve for implantation. So it's kind of natural. But to me, the strength training isn't what should be given or go away, but that's what we see on social media.
I love that approach.
So it's like, that's the core. It's the other days that we're kind of looking at, what should we do different?
Yes. Like if you're adding HIIT, maybe you take out your HIIT session.
Exactly.
Maybe, because cardio is really interesting. Cardio comes and goes very quickly. Like you can, if you've ever been on vacation and you like haven't worked out and you come back,
it's gone.
Your cardio is like gone. Like it can come and go within a matter of a couple of weeks. Of course, it takes time to build significantly, but strength training and muscle comes and goes a lot slower, which is good and bad. But that's the good thing about cardio, is like, even if people panic about taking it out, like, am I going to lose all my gains? It's like, if you take it out for a couple of days, you might, feel a little gassed when you come back, but you're going to feel probably the same once you like are a weekend. So,
right. So it's not quite the same.
No.
When it comes to people who are trying to conceive, you've heard me say this before, right? I always want them to shift their mentality a little, because we want to be able to convince the brain that we're at a good place to get pregnant. Yes. We know that certain activities, high intensity exercise, vigorous running, for example, 58% of runners have a luteal phase defect, like first sign of ovulatory issues. So that means that if we want to get pregnant, we've got to make sure we really are giving our brain all the right signals. But that isn't I can't exercise at all, and that isn't do nothing, right?
Yes.
So it's still where strength training should be the core. And that's what I tell every patient. But I always want them to dial what they're doing for cardio down a little bit, or just be a little bit more mindful, especially when it comes to if they're already having any ovulatory issues, if, they're having infertility. We don't want to be adding any inflammation to the pie by overtraining or by doing something that is stressful for our body.
Yes. I love that.
I see so many fertility doctors though, who tell their patients, no exercise, don't do anything at all. Yes. And that drives me crazy.
Well, that can't be good for just stress, which is not conducive for fertility, you would
No.
think. So I feel
or for ongoing pregnancy, right? Because
Yes.
we know that, your health during pregnancy, your ability to tolerate labor, for recovery, for postpartum health,
yes.
the more skeletal muscle you have built up, the better the entire pregnancy is going to be.
Yes.
So why would
100%.
we, before you get pregnant, say you can't, and then expect women to feel comfortable exercising during pregnancy?
Well, a lot of them don't. A lot of them just don't end up doing it because they're like, I'm scared, or they get detrained during that time. And then and then you hit your first trimester and you're like, the last thing I want to do is work out right now because I feel bad. A lot of women feel so bad during their first trimester. Ugh. And then they hit their second trimester and they might feel a little bit better, but then they're like, well, what do I do now? I'm so out of my routine. And so they spend like 9 months plus the time to conceive detraining. And then they hit postpartum.
For the hardest thing your body will ever do.
Right.
You are like detraining during the hardest physical challenge that your body will ever have.
And heal from and recover from. And I know it is really a shame that that's still being recommended. But again, I think it's because like, as a practitioner, this was frustrating for me. I was like, well, where do I like send these to? I don't really feel comfortable sending them to like CrossFit or like just set them. I mean, you can definitely just lift on your own, like for sure. But a lot of women are like, I don't know what to do. They want to go to a class or they want to be led or something. So I think it can be really frustrating to be like, well, what can I do? Right. That's where I recommend, honestly, if someone wants to just start on their own, go do machines. Like, there's nothing, machines can absolutely build muscle and it can be a great way for you to like get going.
And like learn how to move your body.
Learn how to move it.
Assistance.
You don't have to start with heavy barbell squats. Like you can start with, there's machines a lot of times at gyms for every muscle group. So you could do a circuit of machines and that can be effective.
What I find is that, some fertility doctors don't want to have the discussion with their patients about like what they can and can't do. So they put this blanket, you can't do anything. And some patients are like, well, that can't be good for me, right? And then they do too much, or then they do get themselves in trouble, right? Because we'll use fertility treatment, right? During IVF, we have a very specific set of recommendations to pull back from because we don't want you to have ovarian torsion, right? Where your ovaries getting enlarged with IVF. We don't want it to twist and have the blood flow constricted and be a surgical emergency.
Totally.
So I always say to patients at that phase, your ovaries are like water balloons in your pelvis, and I need them to stay in your pelvis. That doesn't mean you can't do anything, but it means you have to think about what movement is going to move them and what are they going to stay here for?
Totally.
So like we'll use a bicep curl. Of course you can do that. Your water balloons are going nowhere.
Yes.
Right? Even a slow squat. Your water balloons are staying rooted in the pelvis.
That's a great analogy.
But now if you're going running, we know exactly.
They're jiggling.
They're jiggling, right? And we'll see patients who will present and they'll have ovarian torsion because they didn't listen. The recommendations felt so off pace that then they didn't get the right recommendations for what they really need to avoid.
Totally.
Right?
It was like so black and white.
It's like, so you can't do anything. And they're like, that can't be right.
Yeah.
And so then they didn't get any good information about what they can
do.
And can't do.
Right.
Tell me about pregnancy though, because I know that, you're not an obstetrician. We're a physical therapist.
Yes.
Actively pregnant though. And I love that on social media, you've been promoting, I am working out during my pregnancy.
Yes. Big believer in continuing to lift weights during your pregnancy. And of course, there's modifications like, core work will eventually change once the bump gets to a certain size and it's difficult to regulate intra-abdominal pressure. You don't want to lay flat on your stomach. Things change and modify. But a lot of the routine that we've talked about to this point can stay the same. You can keep that cornerstone of strength training and then add in your cardio from there. So I strength train 5 times a week and then I, for 35 minutes each. And I walk most days and I do like a little bit of like, it's called like steady state. So like 15 minutes of like moderate intensity cardio, like once or twice a week. So it's not that much of a time commitment. And I have had this is my second pregnancy. I've had easy pregnancies to this point. I know a lot of that is genetics and I want to be sensitive about that because that's not everybody's experience. But I do think that exercise has allowed me to keep my energy levels up, which is so important because I have a 1-year-old. And
it's tough.
Yes, and sleep better and feel better and just feel strong. I'm a big believer that you can continue to progressively overload and get stronger during pregnancy if you are doing things like regulating your intra-abdominal pressure, correctly, which we can talk about if you want. And listening to your body, right? Like our bodies are so intuitive during pregnancy, especially. So I believe like in the literature suggests this, some preliminary literature suggests this as well. Like you can train close to failure during pregnancy and there aren't necessarily harmful benefit. Like there's no harm. I don't know if you've seen anything different, but
no, it's the same thing. That there's no scientific reason why we have to stop, especially building muscle during pregnancy. Yeah. And I share kind of with you with ACOG, all their focus is on cardiac activity, right? Which, really doesn't represent what I think the number one thing most women should be focused on during their pregnancy. And sometimes that feels like such a barrier, like 150 minutes and I feel like crap. So like, I'm not going to do anything.
Totally.
Right? Versus looking at increments of how we can help at least maintain, if not build, muscle during pregnancy because we know what's coming to your body.
Right. Because postpartum, you should rest. And I would be interested to hear your take on postpartum rest and things like that. I know that some people think you can start exercising sooner than 6 weeks. I waited until I got my doctor's approval, but some people,
the 6 weeks postpartum, really it's longer than that, but we'll specifically say the 6 weeks postpartum, your body is undergoing the quickest and biggest change that it will, right?
Totally.
If we think about the fact that it takes us 9 months to get to that stage where we had a baby, right? We are slowly putting on the weight, slowly having progesterone change, how our joints are functioning, right? Everything changes over time and we slowly adjust. And then rapidly, everything changes, right? We go from having high estrogen and progesterone to none. We have this major weight and fluid shift. How your kidneys work change, how your heart works change, your lung capacity changes, in addition to no sleep. Yes. And a little
huge life change,
right, to take care of.
Yes.
But your body physically is changing so much in that time. We don't need to feel this idea of this culture to bounce back so quickly.
Totally.
It's not going to make any positive benefits. And if anything, we need to appreciate, I think this is great in postpartum and in real life, like the importance of rest and recovery.
Yes,
right?
Totally. 100%. And I think you can intuitively feel that as a postpartum person. Like you're like, exercise.
You're just tired on a reason.
Yeah, totally. You're like, I'm just trying to stay alive, honestly, like let alone trying to exercise. But when you can get back to exercise and when you do feel comfortable getting back to exercise, what's great about spending 9 months of pregnancy trying to build muscle, and I like to shoot to build it because even if you don't build it, you're at least maintaining.
Yeah.
Then when you get back to exercise, you haven't spent those 9 months detraining your body. You have a base of muscle that even if you've lost some muscle in the postpartum period, the great thing about building muscle is it comes back quicker the second time. And I think it's because of these myonuclei that are built when you build new tissue and those aren't lost. Yes. So it's like a literal muscle memory. So it comes back quicker the second time, which is awesome. And I experienced that postpartum when I went to go embark on trying to build my muscle back. It came back just in a few months, whereas to build it took, a year. So that's really promising. And you just feel stronger. You just feel a lot more capable, where again, I don't have anything to compare it to because I strength trained throughout my first pregnancy and this one as well. But I just hear from women that it's very difficult. You feel very weak coming back if you've been detraining all of pregnancy or haven't been strength training. And it's not to say that you can't get that back. Like you absolutely can. It's never too late, but it just gets a lot easier.
And I think I just want to say that if your doctor is telling you no, right, that you can't, I think we should always follow up with, why, if it doesn't make sense to you.
Totally.
Like I had my first pregnancy, my daughter was growth restricted. So in my second pregnancy, they really wanted me to increase calories, dial back calorie expenditure. That didn't mean that I did nothing, but I definitely changed what I did. But I understood why they were recommending that.
Totally.
Right?
It's a great reason.
Right. And I think though, if somebody's just blanket saying no, and you are questioning it, you should feel comfortable advocating for yourself and trying to get the answers, because there are real medical reasons why somebody should not work out, right?
Totally.
Oh, your cervix is shortening. Oh, there is growth restriction. Oh, there are certain reasons why in a pregnancy we might not want you to. But it shouldn't be this blanket, no, you shouldn't work out, or no, you shouldn't lift muscle, or no, you shouldn't go to fatigue.
Do you see a lot of doctors, a lot of OBs kind of giving that blanket recommendation, or do you see things shifting, or where are we at now?
I definitely think that, as the field has changed over time, right? I have peers who are definitely thinking of more whole body approach and understanding that the recovery from pregnancy is not just this 9-month journey. right?
Yes.
And so I do think the approach is changing, but there's a lot of physicians who just give blanket advice. I think
that's fair.
I think it's lazy in some ways, right? They don't appreciate the fact the woman on the other side of the table is smart enough to understand why something's being recommended and something else isn't.
Yeah, I agree. And in some ways, like, it does make sense to like be more conservative during pregnancy, because it's like you can always get that back like later after the baby's born. But I think that I kind of think it's more conservative to recommend like movement in some form, like for healthy pregnancies, of course, because it's just so beneficial for you, for the baby, for, reduces risk of gestational diabetes. Like all of those things can be incredible benefits. So but I don't want to like trash doctors. I'm just curious as to because my doctors were always suggesting it.
Yeah, I think it's really different, and I mean, that's like across the board about how we'll see a lot of doctors. Everybody practices differently. Sometimes they're dismissive about lifestyle factors or exercise. Others really do a great job of educating and advocating for their patients. And I think like anything, you really want to have somebody you trust who's giving you advice, right? You want them to give you advice. You want to be able to trust that medical advice. And if you can't, you shouldn't hesitate to maybe go get another opinion.
Yeah,
right?
Totally. And asking why, I think, is really empowering.
Okay, last topic I just want to talk about a little bit is we're seeing this huge trend, and I think it's great for women who are in perimenopause or menopause, really focusing more on building muscle, trying to work on, bone health and kind of building up strength, as opposed to let's fight the midlife bulge with cardio.
Yes. Well, first of all, I feel bad for the woman of that demographic right now, because, oh my gosh, in one way, there's a swing of this is real. Your symptoms are real, and let's care for you and let's give you help. Let's help you instead of just dismissing your symptoms. And then on the other side, there's a lot of sensationalism around it, and a lot of things that are kind of taken one step too far and aren't necessarily based in the current literature that we have. So when we look at what works for this group of women, as far as strength training and building muscle, we see that the same rules tend to apply. When we look at these studies that are, the 6 to 30 rep range and the light to moderate load and getting close to failure, we see women that are in perimenopause in these studies and benefiting. We see all the time anecdotally that women of this age group, they don't necessarily need to lift super heavy, but that's what they're getting told to do. They have to lift 6 reps, heavy. You have to do squats. You have to do deadlifts, things like that. And I think that approach absolutely can work. And I'm not saying it won't, but I'm just saying it's not the only way. Because again, I think it's really difficult for women who, if you're in your 40s or 50s, you probably grew up as a cardio bunny, doing all the cardio. So it's really hard to switch from doing cardio and light weights to, now I have to lift, super duper heavy. Like that's a big switch, and that's a big mindset switch. And that's going to be hard for me to stay consistent with. I don't want to do that. So if we give them an in-between where it's like, no, here's another option. You can lift relatively light as long as you're training close to failure. And, you can keep your cardio, but you don't have to do a ton of it. And knowing the constrained energy model helps, like knowing that you don't need to burn yourself into the ground to see results. I think that understanding those things are really crucial.
I love that. Yeah. Well, Dr. Shannon, I could just talk to you all day long. Okay.
Same.
I just love everything and how you frame movement as such a, advantageous part of our body and something that should be used as a tool to help us and not a punishment or not a restriction. And really, you opened up a lot of ideas, I think, that should feel freeing for women who previously have felt maybe constricted by certain recommendations of what they should or they shouldn't do.
That's my hope.
So I love that. But we end each episode by asking our guests, what's one key piece of advice for health that you wish women knew at an earlier age?
Build muscle as soon as you can. As soon as you can. It's never too early. It's never too late, but it's never too early.
Yeah. I mean, today's the day. If you haven't started, right?
Start today
is the day.
Yeah.
Where can everyone find you and follow along and learn more?
Yes. So I'm on Instagram. I try to post lots of educational stuff there. That's Dr. Shannon DPT. And I have a podcast that's currently on pause, but lots of great episodes breaking down the science. That's called The Dr. Shannon Show. And then we have a fitness app called EVLO Fitness, evlofitness.com. And you can follow us on Instagram too. There's educational posts on there too.
It's amazing. Everybody should actually check it out. And thank you so much for joining us. And thank you guys for watching this week's episode. Please ask any questions or comments that you have and share it with everybody that you love. Until next week, thank you, friends. Thank you for listening to the As a Woman podcast. If you're ready to take control of your reproductive health, my new book, The Fertility Formula, is your next step. It's a science-backed guide to understanding your hormones, optimizing your fertility, and owning your reproductive future. You can order your copy and learn more at nataliecrawfordmd.com/book. And as always, follow along at Natalie Crawford MD for even more support. Because knowledge is power, and your health deserves a formula made just for you as a woman.